go ahead and dive right into the material here. Switch on the whiteboard. So, like I said, I'm Dr. LeGrand, and today we're going to be talking about why dopamine isn't the only problem to your ADHD problems that you do have, because it's a lot more than just having low dopamine. So first off, we understand that dopamine, it's a neurotransmitter. It helps, basically with mental focus and clarity. It gives us also motivation and drive. But there's a lot of other different neurotransmitters out there than just only dopamine. But let's dive a little bit deeper of why we shouldn't just be looking at just dopamine. First off, if we look at the breakdown of actually dopamine and the neurotransmitter pathway of it, first off, you have something like phenylalanine, which I already have it marked on here. So, PA, so phenethylamine. And then, of course, it's broken down to the amino acid phenylalanine. Then it's broken down to tyrosine, which a lot of us are familiar about. And then it's broken down to dopa, and then finally dopamine. And then guess what? Dopamine is broken down to norepinephrine and epinephrine, which with a lot of people with ADHD, we do see that dopamine levels can be low as well as norepinephrine levels can be low. But also all these other ones that I mentioned also can be low. And if there is issues there, we have to address those, whether implementing the amino acid phenylalanine, which is very common with people with ADHD when we need to implement that. And of course, tyrosine can be another option as well as L-DOPA. And then of course, helping and supporting norepinephrine and epinephrine. Now, on top of that, low doping levels, at least from my experience with working people and also like testing some of these, is that it's less than half of the real problem for people with ADHD. It really is. And really, stimulants and medications that really do raise dopamine levels. But the problem here is sometimes if your dopamine levels are already elevated to begin with and you add in a medication, it can make things also worse. So let me explain about that. So if you understand about medication here, there's a few things you have to understand. So if you look at this, these are neurons. There's the receiving neuron, and then there's the sending neuron. And you have, for example, where there is different dopamine receptors that receive the dopamine receptors, and then there's also dopamine that moves back and forth, sending to the neurons, like signaling. So this is the constant communication between the neurons. Now, when you add something like a medication right here, what that does, it blocks the dopamine transporter, which causing an increase in concentration of dopamine in the synapses. Now, why is this happening? Because it's blocking that pathway of that communication so that you can have increase of dopamine. Now, why is this a problem? It can be a problem if you already have elevated dopamine levels, right? So that can increase it. But then also your body naturally, in a way, can slow down production because now the medication is kind of taking over. So this is why a lot of people have withdrawal effects when they decide to slow down on their medication, or there's a big, huge shortage of ADHD medications, which is really unfortunate for a lot of people who are needing their medications, and they're starting to have these withdrawal effects because of this. It's because your brain, when it's not with the medications, it's used to producing it. Then when you add the medication, it's blocking that pathway, and therefore it slows things down, and therefore you can have a lot of withdrawal effects. So that is one thing you have to kind of be, keep in mind when it comes to the medication. Now, honestly, really, when it comes to this happening over time, we can, as adults with ADHD, we can reach burnout and simply run on fuel because our energy and our focus and clarity can be definitely depleted over time, and that causes issues. And so this is where we have to look at other things than just dopamine. So one thing is looking at adrenals. Adrenals is a big one that we have to look at and keep in mind that there's other parts of our body that can have contributing factors. So with adrenals, so like when we run on stimulants, whether that is coffee, energy drinks, even some medications, it's pretty much asking more from the brain and also our adrenals. It's like squeezing out the cortisol and things to have more of that energy. But when we have those issues, it's depleting the body. It's depleting the body from those nutrients specifically because it's a stimulant. Remember, it's stimulating the body to ask more from it, but it's not really necessarily giving anything to the body. So that's where we can run into problems. And this is where we have to run testing such as like cortisol levels. We do this through saliva testing. There's lots of different labs out there where you can actually test your variances of your cortisol levels throughout the day. And this can impact our mental focus and clarity as well, especially when we're not adding nutrients to the body. And so what we need to focus on is adding more nutrients to the body, such as different high-quality proteins, high fats, healthy fats, as well as different vegetables and nutrients that feed the body. Now, another thing that we also have to look at that can be a contributing factor is the digestive system and also the liver. So let me talk about each one of those. First, let's talk about the liver. So the liver in itself is a very important, vital organ for detoxifying the body. Now, if the liver is not working and it's not able to detoxify the body from its things that we do accumulate over from the environment, the things that we consume over time, guess what? The body gets backed up, and that can lead into brain fog. Brain fog, unfocused, fatigue. There's several things that I can also hear, and then of course it does help with regulate our blood sugar levels, and also it does help with iron, which iron is also something that's very common with people with ADHD that can be depleted in that area, so we have to keep that in mind as well. So if we're dealing with the brain, the unfocused, the fatigue, along with that, it's very important that we have to look at our liver's health when it comes to also our ADHD health, and not just looking at the dopamine. Now, when it comes to digestion, you are what you eat, okay? And if you are someone that is eating good, you're eating the proteins, you're eating the healthy fats, the vegetables, you're doing all the good things, but if your digestive system is not working properly, just like a factory, if the gears aren't working right and your digestive system's not working right, guess what? It's not going to feed the brain and also feed the body the proper nutrients because it's not breaking down. So a lot of people miss this when it comes to also ADHD health, is looking at digestive health. If it is not working properly, if you're not digesting, and a lot of times we see this through the pancreas, which helps give different enzymes for breaking down the macronutrients. So you need to look at that. So adding something like a pancreatic enzyme can be very beneficial by adding something like a digestive enzyme to help breaking down the foods. It also might be the stomach acidity. So if you don't have enough stomach acid, adding something like HCl can be also very beneficial. And by doing this will help continue to breaking down the foods so that the foods that you are consuming are good. Now, if you are eating crappy, that is also going to cause digestive issues. It's going to cause irritable bowel syndrome. It's going to cause constipation. It's going to cause even loose stool. It's going to cause different things throughout your digestive tract that is going to break down your digestive system. So therefore, it's not going to be able to help what it needs to feed the body, especially feeding the brain, our ADHD brain, of the proper nutrients. So that is definitely key. Number one is trying to eat the right things. But if you are eating the right things and you're having these issues, you have to look further. There's also looking at the gut flora. Okay, so sometimes, especially if you've done a series of antibiotics in the last 2 years, this destroys all of our good and bad bacteria, destroys it all. So you have to replenish this through probiotics. Okay, but also sometimes there is other microbiomes that could be good and bad, and you can run this through testing of also testing your microbiome, but also looking at your micronutrients. So you want to make sure that your micronutrients, such as your B vitamins, you're also your vitamin D levels, you're checking for your iron levels, you're checking for specifically all your different vitamins that could be possibly deficient, and this can be different contributing factors to your ADHD symptoms, especially zinc and magnesium if those are low, okay? Now, another thing that we have to look at is thyroid. You guys have heard me talk about thyroid quite a bit, and some of the big indicators for thyroid symptoms that are very similar with ADHD is adults, more specifically adults, so fatigue. We reach burnout. As shocking as that might sound for some people with ADHD, it does happen with adults significantly because we do reach burnout. And we aren't always hyperactive. Even if we do have the hyperactivity, we can have the issues of also reaching burnout. But then also, focus issues is very common with thyroid issues, and of course with ADHD. Constipation, which a lot of digestive issues I see are very common with people with ADHD. And then of course, there is the irritability. Sorry for my writing, but I'm not the best writer. So irritability is also another common one. There's other symptoms, of course, when it comes to symptoms that we see with thyroid issues, such as, the cold and heat intolerances, Not as so much as some common with ADHD, but what is common with ADHD and also thyroid is heart palpitations. So a lot of people with ADHD deal with high anxiety, but also thyroid issues. When you have a thyroid problem, you can also have rapid heart rate. And this is where you might have found that your doctors might have told you that you might not be able to take a medication because maybe you have too fast beat of heart rate, too high blood pressure. But it could be also due to maybe you have a thyroid issue and something you should check out. So if you haven't checked the digestion system, the liver system, the thyroid, your adrenals, and then of course looking at other possibilities that could be contributing, such as nutritional deficiencies, your microbiome, all these things can be contributing similar symptoms to your ADHD symptoms. And if you can eliminate those, guess what? You will find that your ADHD symptoms can be a lot less than what they are now. But doctors do not address this. They don't. They just see your ADHD and like, okay, that's it. We just got to look at the brain. No, your whole body is interconnected, and we have to address those things in order to eliminate a lot of the other additional ADHD symptoms that could be contributing or making the ADHD symptoms even worse. So next thing, looks like ET himself, I presume that the most of this also applies to ADD. Yes, ET, yes, this does apply a lot to so yeah, when he's talking about ADD or ADHD inattentive type, yes, it does apply also to inattentive type because, of course, there is the focus issues with inattentiveness with people with thyroid and the other things that I've mentioned. But really good question. Okay, next, I want to share just a patient that I had that had a lot of, she was on ADHD medication. She had ADHD. She was exhausted, unfocused. Her moods were very out of balance, and she was just prescribed just the medication. She had to run any of these tests. And after I ran a lot of these different tests, and the test results, showed that her progesterone and estrogen levels were not adequate. Her actually progesterone levels were a little elevated, estrogen levels were a little bit low, and then her cortisol levels were extremely low. And it explained a lot why her mental focus and also her energy were really low. And then her dopamine and norepinephrine levels were high, sky high. And this is why she was feeling so agitated and irritated, because she was on a medication that was increasing those levels to be higher to begin with. And so once we made the adjustments and changes and adding the different lifestyle and nutrients and supplementation to help her with that, just within 2 weeks later, she had more energy. She was more focused. Her boss was really satisfied with her production because she was showing up work late, fatigued, exhausted, not present. But after this, her boss noticed a huge difference from that. Okay. And then on top of that, there's been other people that I've worked with. She mentioned, working with us, definitely can focus better. I got a lot of work done since starting the program, more energy throughout the day. Shaheen, 2 weeks later, again, now not everyone just gets it in 2 weeks. Some people do because they're so deficient. But just in 2 weeks in, he already feels better in terms of mood, attention, and the new supplements have had a great impact on my patients and managing my thoughts better. So I have a question for all of you that here are attending. Would you like my help to get similar results? Go ahead and put that in the chat towards the end. Okay. Looks like we got some here. All right. So next here's exactly how I can help you out. If you're on our last live stream, I talked about how I'm now actually doing consultations, one-on-one consultations for people. We haven't been doing that in the past. People have asked me to do these one-on-one consultations, so now we are doing these. And if you're outside of the U.S., I'm also offering these services. Now, this is just for adults, so I only have slots for just adults with ADHD. So currently, we're filled with the slots for parents with kids with ADHD. So I'm sorry, I'll let people know when we do have more slots for parents with kids with ADHD. So right now, we're just working with adults with ADHD currently. But if you're outside the U.S., that's fine. We also work with people outside of the U.S. as well with our virtual practice. So what I'm offering is basically where you could schedule a one-on-one consultation with me as a deep dive of 45 minutes to an hour, where we deep dive as far as where your problems are. I have you guys fill out a questionnaire to really understand where your issues are, so I can look at that before our consultation. And then, of course, I have you submit any previous labs that you have had done in the past 2 years. It isn't a requirement, but if you have any labs that you've done in the past 2 years, you could send that to me before our actual consultation, and that way I can look over it. So we use that consultation time for the best time of our value to go in over there and actually coming up with a strategic, customized plan for you. So usually this is the value of these things. The 45-minute one-on-one, typically, you know, in my practice, I charge about $750 for that. And then the assessment, $197 for doing the questionnaire. And then, of course, reviewing past labs. But for you here, you guys on the webinar, it's not going to cost you that. It's only, it's just $197 for here on the webinar. So great price. It's usually, I don't usually discount these things, but you could just click on the link below to book that call. So this is, you know, some other people that we've worked with is Scott mentioned here, you know, Dr. LeGrand is an intelligent coach. We really, who really knows his stuff. I recommend his program to those who have serious about change and want to grab life by the horns. I'm not going to read the whole testimonial. And then there's Aaron. Again, just within the first week, he was able to notice a large improvement in his focus and concentration and able to carry out throughout tasks. He says this stuff really works. So this is what you do next is there's in the description below, there is a link that you click on that has the discounted consultation price. Once you click on that, it will take you to this page. You'll put your information in here. Then once you hit complete purchase, it will take you to this page. This is where you'll pick a time specifically of where to book the consultation. I'm sorry, not where to book. I mean, you'll pick a date and time of where to, obviously to where we'll have that consultation. If for any reason there is a time that doesn't work, I have morning, afternoon, and even late afternoon to closer to evening, depending on your time zone. So I make sure that there's, you know, plenty of those times. If for any reason you don't see a time slot, you can email me. Typically, I only have about 4 to 6 different slots each week because I still am seeing a lot of different patients. So I have very limited spots that I can do. So once they're filled up, I mean, they're filled up, but reach out to me specifically, and we could definitely look at a time. You can email me at this email here. So at drlegrand@optimalmindperformance.com. Once you've done that, then you'll put in your name, then of course your phone number, email address, and then, of course, what you're coming in for. Again, this is only for adults with ADHD. So if you're a parent, I'm sorry, right now our slots are filled up for work with parents with kids with ADHD. This is only if you're an adult that has ADHD, or you suspect you have ADHD, or you just have focus issues. About half of our patients and clients actually don't even know if they have ADHD. They just have focus issues, and that's what we actually focus on helping them with, okay? Then it will take you, once you've submitted that, then it will take you to the thank you page. And you want to check your email because, again, it's going to give you the invite, the Zoom link to our consultation. Then you also get an invite to our Practice Better portal, and this is our client portal. And this is where you're going to get the questionnaire submitted to you. And this is an extensive questionnaire, so I can look at beforehand the Focused Mind questionnaire to understand more of the issues that you need. So I can look at that before our consultation. And then on top of that, if you have previous labs in the past 2 years, you will upload that. And that way I can look at your labs beforehand. And then you will make sure to download the Zoom app before our call. Make sure to show up on time and block out 45 minutes to even 60 minutes. Sometimes I go over. You know, no additional cost to you. If we need to go over that 60 minutes, I usually will do that. But show up early, and yeah, that's it. So thank you guys for attending. Again, you just put that in the description below. We'll answer Q&A questions here in just a second. But yeah, you just click on the description below to book that call now for that price of just the $197. Okay. All right.